Lately, after a corporate grind, I decided to head back to school. By the way, I'm Pip, just an ordinary pig trying to survive the daily hustle. When people think of school, they think it's all about getting smart, building that resume. So many people think that way. But I noticed something pretty wild. Actually learning stuff, that's only like 20 to 30% of it. The rest is just playing the social game, blending in with peers, pleasing the teachers, networking, and balancing work with final exams. Maybe it's because I'm a grown pig now, paying my own bills, so my goals shifted. But looking back at high school and college, it was honestly the exact same thing. Back then, I only had two priorities. First, get straight A's so my parents wouldn't lecture me at dinner, and to feel like I had a future.
Second, don't be a loser. Fit in with the cool kids and avoid getting canceled. Honestly, I completely failed at that. I was a pretty awkward pig back then. So yeah, nobody really liked me. But here's the real kicker. Everyone says school is for education, but knowledge is just a side effect of cramming for the next big test. Once finals are over, everything is forgotten. There is a massive gap here between expectations and reality. In pop culture, school is painted as this fun journey of growth. But in reality, it's pure survival. It's about pleasing the people who run your life, like parents and teachers. Because of this gap, so many people hate school. Today, we're diving deep into this drama. Just so you know, I compiled this from the Game Theory series on predictive history. I really vibe with some of his points, but some parts sound like a total conspiracy theory. So just take this as entertainment. Put it on in the background while doing dishes, driving to work, or hitting the gym. The guy overanalyzes a bit, but there are plenty of solid takeaways. If you disagree, drop a comment below. Alright, first, let's go back to basics. What was school actually designed for?
According to Professor Zhang, in a perfect world, school has three main goals. First, mastering language skills. That's listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Listening and reading are for taking in data. Speaking and writing are for creating value from what you've learned. Second, building core life skills. Essential things to survive in corporate America, like critical thinking, teamwork, and communication. Third, learning how to learn. Optimizing how you absorb and apply new information into the real world. Mind you, it's just learning how to learn, because most useful real-world knowledge is never taught in a classroom. Personally, I think these three goals sound great, but the professor argues that most schools fail miserably. In fact, they do the exact opposite.
American students nowadays barely read books, and the traditional school system is designed like a literal battle royale. Your classmates are actually your rivals. The system forces you to compete for every single decimal point on your GPA to secure that valedictorian spot. I don't know how Gen Z or Gen Alpha cope now, but back in my day, it was a total dog-eat-dog world. It was an environment where if you want to rise, someone else has to fall. The smart kids who wanted to keep their rank had to sacrifice their popularity. They never shared notes or helped with homework.
My generation was brainwashed by this zero-sum game mindset. So when we enter the corporate world, we still view coworkers as enemies instead of teammates. In a world that requires both competition and high-level cooperation, growing up like that is a total disadvantage. As for the final goal, lifelong learning, let's be completely honest with each other. We're all pretty lazy when it comes to studying, because school was mostly about mindless cramming, learning things without knowing why.
But we did it out of fear of getting an F, getting detention, or losing our allowance. In short, school didn't teach you how to think. It taught you how to game the testing system. This brings us to a major question. If the goals are so noble, why is the outcome so completely broken? We will use game theory to crack this education game. And to break this game down, we first need to look at the players.
In this education game, there are 6 main groups of players. First, obviously, the students. Next are parents, then the teachers. Then we have the school board, principals, and higher-up administrators. That's 6 groups total on the board. In theory, students should be the VIPs. They are the biggest and most important group. But Professor Jiang points out a harsh reality. Students are the largest group, but have the least say. They are at the bottom of the food chain. So who actually calls the shots? The ones cutting the checks for tuition. That's right, the parents. The leverage they hold is absolutely insane. And they don't just write polite emails. If the parents are unhappy, the school board loses sleep and teachers panic. So schools actually revolve around the parents rather than the students. Honestly, a single pig like me has never raised kids, so I can't say for sure. But from what I see, it depends on the school. At public schools, parents don't have that much leverage because they aren't paying massive tuition out of pocket. But at expensive private schools, this is 100% true.
The second player in this game is the teacher. They are the ones on the front lines. Or in game theory terms, teachers are the ones enforcing the rules daily. They decide if your day is heaven or hell. They hold the power over grades and conduct. On the org chart, teachers aren't at the top, but in reality, they have direct authority over a student's life. One step above teachers is the administration. Their role is pretty important too, but they still bow down to the top bosses. Their main job is just doing public relations, like managing drama with the PTA. As for the state education department, theoretically, they write the master rulebook. But the professor says, out of thousands of schools, as long as your school avoids major scandals, the top officials won't really care. They just set broad guidelines on paper. Alright, so those are the players. The next thing we need to dissect in game theory is the reward system of the game.
There is a fundamental rule in game theory. Everyone wants a max reward with the least effort. Humans and pigs are naturally lazy and greedy. It's not because we are bad people. It's just the most efficient way to survive. Let's apply this rule to the education game, starting with the students, like yours truly. If you ask kids today why they go to school, I don't know what they would say. But back then, I just repeated the usual script. It's for my future, to get into an Ivy League, to get a good job and become successful. I genuinely believed that at the time. But once I was actually in the classroom, my real goals changed completely.
Priority number 1, fit in and avoid peer pressure. Priority number 2, please the grown-ups. Because parents pay for your lifestyle and teachers control your grades. From that, this pig learned a brutal lesson. Grades don't measure real knowledge. They measure how good you are at pleasing the teachers and the system. Take high school English essays, for example. I really wanted to write my own creative thoughts, but I also desperately needed an A for my GPA. So what was the smart strategy? Figure out the teacher's rubric, see what they want, and write exactly that.
Basically, you study to pass the test. You don't study to gain actual wisdom or to build critical thinking skills. Thinking deeper about this, I have a counterargument. Sometimes people actually need to be told how to think. Because if we just rely on unguided thought, we can come up with some really dumb ideas. So sometimes being guided on the right path is necessary for growth. Back to the school life of Pip. Students aren't just playing the grading game. They are also playing the social survival game.
For many kids, fitting in with the popular crowd is way more important than getting good grades. This totally aligns with basic survival instinct. Being canceled or ostracized in an American high school feels like a literal death sentence to a kid. It leads straight to severe depression.
Next, let's talk about the parents. Their goal when sending their kids to school is for them to be successful, happy, and secure. That sounds completely reasonable, but the definition of success is often light years apart between them. For American parents, what does success look like? Getting into top-tier magnet schools, having a solid career path to make big bucks, and let's not forget, family status. To some parents, kids are like a luxury Gucci bag. They are terrified that their luxury bag looks cheap, broken, or doesn't fit in with high society. Because if their bag stands out in a bad way, they feel embarrassed at neighborhood barbecues. Honestly, I think that's a bit unfair to parents. Not everyone lives just for the status gain. Plenty of parents truly love their kids, but they are trapped in the mindset of their own generation. Back in their day, nobody taught them to learn for fun. It was all about cramming to pass the big exams. Parents are just doing the best they can with what they know. Add in the generation gap and poor communication, and kids hear it as, my parents are just controlling, and they just want bragging rights.
Now, let's look at the teachers. Here is a harsh truth we have to face. There are many teachers who are deeply passionate, but many just view teaching as a 9-to-5 job to pay bills. Teachers are human. They have families to feed. They have mortgages, car loans, and financial stress. So their goal is sometimes very simple. Clock in, survive the school hours, finish the paperwork, and head home to take care of their own life. If you've been in the corporate grind, you get it. A working pig like me operates the exact same way. Of course, there are still teachers with burning passion, but that passion doesn't pay the monthly bills. It's hard to stay inspired forever in this system. So the safe bet is just teaching to the curriculum, no matter if students actually learn anything.
The story at the board level is even more transactional. Ideally, they should build a top-notch learning environment, but that often clashes with what parents want. Parents just want high GPA and Ivy League admissions, so the administration's main job is keeping parents happy. Because if parents get mad, they complain to the district, they cause a scene, and the principal's job is on the line. Managing that drama is a total nightmare. In public schools, this might not be super obvious, but at elite private prep schools, where parents drop $100,000 a year on tuition, it is a straight-up business transaction.
So now we know what every player wants. Parents want status and instant results. Teachers want peace with zero complaints. The school board wants to secure their seats, and students just want to be liked by peers and please both parents and teachers. Next, let's talk about the grading system. According to Professor Zhang, getting an A is way too easy now. Anyone can get a perfect score just by memorizing. This is what we call grade inflation. Parents want a flawless report card for college apps. Teachers don't want angry phone calls from parents. And schools fear losing tuition money to rivals. So instead of measuring actual learning, grades became a tool to keep customers happy. The professor shared a funny story about his very first year of teaching.
He graded strictly and fairly based on the rubric. The class average was around 80, a solid B. He thought that was totally fine. But in reality, students swarmed his office to complain. In the end, he had to switch to a pass-fail system, which basically meant everyone passed automatically. The education game forces you to play by its rules. Of course, this happens way more at private schools. Public schools with state regulations have more limits, but the obsession with statistics is real everywhere. Third, let's talk about the school's poster kids. Schools always have a tiny group of elite students. They get all the resources and special training.
Come enrollment season, their faces are on giant banners, like 15 Ivy League scholarships this year.
Or 95% college acceptance rate. Parents see that and think, wow, this school is elite. Fourth, let's address the elephant in the room, cheating. According to the professor, it's rampant everywhere, but nobody wants to talk about it openly. Students copy each other's answers during tests. They use ChatGPT to draft their term papers, or hire online essay mills to do the work. Academic integrity forums are exposing scandals daily, but the system has zero incentive to crack down on it. If they get strict, average scores will plummet. Parents will get mad and threaten to transfer their kids, so everyone just turns a blind eye to it. Finally, the endless cycle of teacher turnover. Teachers who actually care and demand real critical thinking and hold students accountable for their work will sooner or later get into trouble.
Parents will complain that the teacher is too harsh, making their kid lose the chance at a top college. The administration gets caught in the crossfire. So the teacher either complies and hands out easy A's, or they pack their bags and leave the school. Then a new teacher comes in and learns the exact same rules, and the toxic cycle just keeps spinning. The result? Kids graduate with a beautiful GPA, but they have no idea how to self-study. They lack the patience to read a full-length book. Give them a hard problem without a cheat sheet, and they will completely freeze up. Worst of all, kids don't find learning fun anymore, because for years they were trained to study just for tests. Once the test is done, the knowledge is deleted.
And this isn't just happening at one bad school. It's the standard reality across America and global education. The scale might vary, but the formula remains the same. I heard the Finnish system is doing a bit better. But looking at the big picture, this is the norm.
To understand the root of this problem, we need to zoom out to the societal level. To measure the health of any culture, experts usually look at 3 core metrics. First is drive, meaning how driven and passionate people are, instead of just quiet quitting and doing the bare minimum. Second is openness. Can that society admit its mistakes and change? And third is connection. Do people feel like they belong to a community? Do they want collective growth or just personal gain? When all 3 metrics are high, schools naturally become amazing places. No one even needs to force or regulate it. Take Finland as a prime case study.
Their population is actually quite small, but their education system is top tier worldwide. Over there, being a teacher is highly prestigious. The pay is great and the social status is high. And they have total autonomy in their classrooms. Because of that, the brightest minds in the country are eager to become educators. It's a profession they are truly proud of. Now, I just read this stuff online. A pig like me hasn't been to Finland to verify. But if it's true, it's a beautiful, virtuous cycle. The system sustains and feeds itself. According to recent global education surveys, they rank number 1 in real-world adult skills, meaning generations raised in the Finnish system navigate the real world incredibly well.
They learn things they actually use in their careers. But here's the catch. Those perfect conditions don't exist everywhere. Finland is small and highly homogeneous. But in giant, complex nations like America, the game is entirely different. As the economy grows and wealth accumulates, inequality spikes along with it. The wealth gap gets wider and wider. And because of this deep economic divide, the social fabric begins to tear apart. Instead of working together for the common good, people switch to a hyper-competitive survival mode. How do I make sure my kid beats everyone else's kid? This is the toxic zero-sum game mindset. That mentality slowly poisons the school system.
turning schools into a literal Hunger Games. As a result, societal openness plummets. It turns society into a very unforgiving place, where one mistake gets you instantly canceled on X. In a cancel culture filled with judgment, admitting a mistake becomes a massive liability. It's no longer seen as a noble virtue. Now, imagine a school principal standing up in front of the parents and bravely saying, "I messed up. This policy failed and I'm sorry." He would get blasted by the angry school board and forced out of his job by the next morning. So people choose the safest route possible. They hide in their shells, refusing to admit faults, and they completely avoid making any real changes. Because change means showing vulnerability and giving critics ammunition to attack you.
But in a world that evolves every single second, a stagnant system is a dying system. And with that, the general drive and passion just drain away. The human brain makes a very logical calculation. If I do extra, no reward. If I mess up, I'm fired. So I'll just do the bare minimum to get by. A passionate teacher who works late grading papers gets paid the exact same as someone watching the clock. Eventually, that teacher's fire will burn out. However, let's look at both sides of the coin. I think the professor's take is a bit too pessimistic. Like, he assumes a wealthy society always ruins education. Look at Finland. They are a rich nation. Not a superpower, but highly prosperous. And they still maintain an incredible school system. So now the whole puzzle finally comes together. Kids hate school not because teachers are evil, and not because students are naturally lazy. It's because the game itself is poorly designed. The incentives are set up so nobody wants to fix it.
This brings us to the ultimate question. What should we do with all this information? From this pig's perspective, you don't need to do anything crazy. You don't need to go reform the American school system. The very first thing you must do is to know exactly what game you are playing, so the game doesn't end up playing you. We need to separate two totally different things: schooling versus learning. These are two completely different worlds. School is where you play the GPA game, the social game with parents and peers. And honestly, those games aren't inherently bad. Knowing how to hit your targets and learning to play by someone else's rubric is actually a very useful real-world skill. Because unless you are building a startup, you will have to play by your boss's standards. And even if you run your own business, you still have to play by the market's rules. So following a set of rules is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. It's just that knowledge isn't the main focus there. And here's the best part. You can totally ace the school game while learning high-value skills on your own. A high GPA is just a vanity metric. It just shows how good you are at pleasing the system. It doesn't measure your true intelligence or wisdom. Instead, we can set up our own metrics for personal growth. Everyone should create their own scorecard because you know yourself better than anyone else. You don't need to borrow someone else's yardstick. For example, how many books did I read this year? How many miles did I run this month? How many hard projects did I complete recently? After doing those challenging things, did it actually improve your daily life? Plus, if you want to learn things you actually love, there is a goldmine of resources out there. It's in books, it's all over YouTube, and in countless high-quality podcasts. And if possible, if you really love gaining wisdom, find 3 to 5 like-minded friends, people who share the exact same drive to learn. Form a tight-knit study group, read together, debate, and challenge each other's ideas. There is one last thing this pig wants to share.
Look, it's totally fine to hate your school, for whatever reason,
Or maybe you're just at that age where rebelling against everything feels cool. But don't confuse that with hating education itself. Schooling and learning are two different beasts. School is a game, sometimes fun, sometimes boring, but self-learning defines your true personal value. So if you can, try to master both.